Welcome to this special presentation of the Kentucky Small Business Development Center, along with the U.S. Small Business Administration. My name is Kevin Norville. I'm the program coordinator of the Kentucky SBDC. If you're not familiar with our organization, let me just take a moment and share. The Kentucky Small Business Development Center has served existing and startup businesses by providing no-cost, confidential business coaching for 40 years. The skill sets of our Kentucky SBDC business coaches, combined with world-class business planning, market research, and financial analysis tools, provides our clients with the resources and support they need to make informed business decisions. The Kentucky SBDC is funded in part through a cooperative agreement with the U.S. Small Business Administration and is hosted by the University of Kentucky's College of Agriculture, Food, and Environment, and supported by various partners statewide. So for more information about us, you can visit our website at KentuckySBDC.com. As I mentioned, this is a special presentation, a little bit different than what we normally do on Wednesday, but I'm very happy here at this time to introduce to you Mr. Robert Coffey. Robert is the District Director of the Kentucky District Office of the U.S. Small Business Administration. And Robert, we really appreciate your assistance in helping to make this presentation possible. And I'll turn things over to you and allow you to introduce our other guests from SBA at this time.
Thanks a lot, Kevin, and I'd like to thank everyone else that is with us this afternoon for taking the time to learn more about this part of the SBA. Most of you I've worked with before, or if you work with our office, we are dealing with people, I guess you might say that it's in one of their best days because they're looking to start a business. So these are some very happy times. They're wanting to get their business plans and you're helping them to get their businesses started or to help them along the way. So we see them most times on their best day. However, there's a part of SBA, the Office of Disaster Assistance, that their dedication is to those who are experiencing what is on the opposite, their worst day. They deal with businesses or individuals who've been affected by either economic or a natural disaster. Now, obviously, COVID-19 highlighted this exponentially when it comes to an economic disaster, the likes of which many have never seen before. So we are excited to have with us Kathy Cook and Julie Garrett from the Office of Disaster Assistance, the Field Operations Center East, located in Atlanta. And they are going to talk to us about the role disaster assistance plays in their part for, again, what they do with the SBA. Again, you see what we do, but these are the heroes behind the scenes that are helping businesses get through some of the worst possible things that they would experience. And they do it with such grace that it's exciting to be associated with them. So I'd like to give our attention now to Julie Garrett and Kathy Cook.
I'm Julie Garrett. I'm the Public Affairs Lead for Kentucky. Going forward after this, if you have any questions about the disaster assistance in your state, feel free to reach out to me. My colleague, Kathy Cook, is so experienced and has so much knowledge about the program. She's going to be the one giving the presentation today. You might have already worked with her in the past. She's been working really hard on COVID-19 outreach. I'm sure you've probably been to webinars she's already done. But with no further ado, here comes Kathy.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you, Robert. And thank you, Kevin. You have to know that you're one of my favorite states because I was born in McDowell, Kentucky, which is in Floyd County, which is in the mountains. At the age of 9 months, I experienced my first flood, and my father was an administrator of one of the coal mining hospitals and took my family to safety. So it bears witness and that I would follow through with the disaster mode here these years later. Let me explain what SBA does. In addition to what Robert said, you want to start a business, you want to expand your operations, you want to consolidate, you're looking for new ideas, you're looking for products. That's not us. We are the Office of Disaster Assistance. And what we do is we provide low interest loans to businesses of all sizes. Even though we work for the Small Business Administration, we work with businesses of all sizes. Nonprofit organizations, and we put private in front of that to mean not government. We also make loans, believe it or not, to homeowners and renters to repair and replace real estate, personal property. Personal property would be like contents, vehicles, machinery and equipment if you're a business, inventory, other business assets that have been damaged or destroyed by a declared disaster. And guess what? There was a declared disaster in Kentucky. So that's the reason for this webinar. We're also going to talk not only about this disaster declaration, but we are going to talk about the COVID-19 loans as well. Next slide, please. All right, so there's basically two types of disaster loans. There are home loans and business loans. The home loans are offered to homeowners and renters for the repair and replacement of their content damage. And then for homeowners, they're also able to get money for the damages to their real estate. And when we say real estate, it's not just the home, but it's the fencing, the garage, swimming pool. So basically the homestead, let's say. For businesses, we offer low interest loans for physical damages. And for businesses, it can be the building or the contents being inventory, machinery and equipment, leasehold improvements, furniture and fixtures. But one component that nobody thinks about is economic injury. Economic injury is money for working capital to keep the business in business. So we're not only trying to repair and replace the business's location of operation, but while they're reconstructing or while the area is being reconstructed, the business is suffering. And so we're providing money, working capital, to help the business pay its normal operating expenses as if the disaster had not occurred. And I'll go over this several times so you don't have to memorize this. And if you know it, all the better. Next slide, please. For this disaster declaration, it was declared by the president, and we encourage everybody, including businesses, to first register with FEMA. And then as a result of that registration, all businesses will be referred to SBA, and homeowners and renters that have sufficient income to afford a disaster loan. FEMA declared certain counties, and we call them primary counties. So if a home, a rental property, a tenant, or business was located in Breathitt, Clay, Estill, Floyd, Johnson, Lee, McGoffin, Martin, and Powell County, then they're eligible for both physical, money to repair and replace, and small businesses are eligible for the economic injury, which is the working capital. We can go beyond what FEMA does. So FEMA's declared those counties, and for those counties only, homeowners and renters will be eligible for grants from FEMA. FEMA doesn't help businesses at all. So what happens is we encourage everybody to first register through FEMA, kind of a repository of people who have been in the disaster and are damaged, so that they get all the names of everybody, and possibly if there's other organizations that come to fruition, they can refer businesses to them. Now, for all the counties that touch those counties, we, SBA, add those counties onto the declaration, because we say business doesn't stop at the county line. You know, when you especially have storms and a flood, it doesn't just go, oh, I'm on the side of Bell County and can't cross over there. Sure, the storm goes over there, but it wasn't sufficient damage for FEMA to declare it. But SBA says, well, you know, there's businesses that operate in those primary counties and they may suffer. Let me give you an idea. Let's say you're in Bell County and what your service is you dry clean linens for hotels and for restaurants. You did not suffer any physical damage at all, but your major customers in, let's say, Martin and Powell County were severely damaged. It's going to take them months to repair their building and start back up. As a matter of fact, the river rose up and damaged the road. So it might be even a year. Well, what are you doing? Those major customers are down. How can you pay for your operations? That's why it's important that SBA extends the declaration to the contiguous counties, because we want to help those businesses that are in operation with the businesses in those primary counties to sustain their operation, pay their fixed debts and their working capital losses, such as, if they didn't earn as much revenue, but you still have utilities to pay, you still have payroll, you still have insurance, you still have lease or mortgage payments. So that's what that's for. The deadline for the physical disaster is usually 60 days from the date of the declaration. So that means that we want everybody who had physical damage to submit their application by June 22nd. If they only sustain working capital loss, then they have all the way till January 24th of 2022. And you're like, well, gee, why do they have so long? Think about it. You might be that linen company and you did not realize that the businesses on the other side of the county had any damage at all from the landslides, the mudslides, the flooding, the severe storms, because it's only May and you only do business with them when it starts to be the holidays, Thanksgiving and Christmas. So then it's close to Thanksgiving and you're starting to call them for the orders of the linens for the season, the Christmas season. And then's when you find out that, hey, they were shut down because they had significant damage from the flooding. That's why we give that 9-month window, because you may not realize until later on that you have some economic injury. The loans are as long as 30 years, and the first payment currently is deferred, which means postponed 18 months from the date of the note. The lowest interest rate for homeowners, which includes the renters, tenants, 1.25%. For business physical loans, it's 3%, and for nonprofit organizations, it's 2%. If you have economic injury only, then it's 3% for businesses, 2% for nonprofits. The rate is fixed for the life of the loan. So there's 3 selling points if you're working with a client who had physical damage. And one is that these are low interest rate loans. 2, you don't have to start paying for 18 months from the note date, not the date that you finished the construction, not the date that all the customers came back, not the date from your first birthday, not the date for my retirement. 18 months from the date of the note. And again, the interest rate is fixed for as long as the loan is. Next slide, please. All right, so this would have been a little easier if I'll probably put it first and I could talk about this. Everything that's in green is a county that FEMA declared. So only the people who are in the green areas, meaning homeowners and renters, are eligible for grants from FEMA. FEMA's grants can cover a multitude of things. They can cover temporary housing for the person to stay in a hotel or motel. It can cover temporary repairs to maybe put a sump pump in, a generator, or more permanent type repairs. FEMA can make those grants and still refer people that have repayment ability, meaning the renters, homeowners, and all businesses, to SBA. What we make is long-term loans for full recovery up to our maximum loan amount. The counties in yellow are to designate for small businesses, small agricultural cooperatives, small aquaculture, and most nonprofit organizations for their working capital needs. So that's the only type of loan they can get. They should not register with FEMA. Only the people in the green area register with FEMA. So that's why we call this the primary counties and the contiguous counties. Next slide, please. How much can you borrow? Well, it really depends on how much you lost. The maximum amount for business physical is $2 million. And again, the physical means the money to repair and replace machinery and equipment, inventory, leasehold improvements, the structure, let's see, inventory, whatever you have. Then if you have physical damage, you may also have economic injury, and you're eligible for $2 million. Between the two, it cannot exceed $2 million. Again, economic injury is for working capital, and the easiest way I can explain that is to keep the business in business. You all know, you've worked with a bunch of borrowers from COVID now and from other SBA loan products. The unique thing about SBA disaster assistance is we are the only program that can make loans to homeowners. And it's not just homeowners, but it's homeowners and renters. We can lend a homeowner up to $200,000 to replace their real estate or repair their real estate. So that means replace their house if they want to move, or repair the house. If they want to move, then the amount of the eligibility is the amount of the damage that they sustain. So let's just say the landslide came and it totally pushed the house off the foundation. The mud came through the basement, the first floor, the house is totaled. Then the maximum amount that we can lend them is up to $200,000. But let's say that what happened is a tree hit the house and damaged the roof. Then maybe the loan would be $25,000, the cost to repair the roof. And if the person says, well, I want to move away from here, the only amount they're entitled to is $25,000, because that's the cost of their repairs. Homeowners and renters can get up to $40,000 for their content loss. Content would be anything that you had in the property that you would take with you if you left. So you wouldn't take wall-to-wall carpet, but you would take a throw rug. You take your vehicle, you take your furniture, take your pots and pans. So whatever that amount is, then you're entitled to up to whatever the verifier estimates the loss at. A very good component in recent years is that SBA and FEMA are talking about mitigation. Mitigation is additional money to protect the property from the same damage occurring, so that if you had a business and you are tired of always getting flooded in the basement and you wanted to elevate the structure, you can borrow an additional 20% above the loan amount just for mitigation, protective improvements. If you, let's see, if you wanted to seal the basement, if you wanted to buy a sump pump, a generator, all those types of things, because now we are trying to protect property from having the same damage occur, so that the individual or the business owner does not have to borrow for future damages. Next slide, please. What does it take to get a loan approval? And this is the same for homeowners, renters, and businesses and nonprofits. All right, you got to be in a declared county to apply. And the net result of the loan is the amount of physical losses or the amount of economic losses minus insurance. We tend to talk about this more in the physical domain because it's easier to understand. If you had $100,000 worth of loss and insurance paid you $80,000, then the net result of the loan is going to be $20,000. But we don't want people to wait on insurance. We want them to apply now, because in some cases, the mortgage company will take the insurance and apply it to the outstanding balance of the mortgage. And in that case, the amount of the loan can be the full value of the losses. Applicants have to have a good credit standing, where we don't tell you credit scores. I don't even know what credit scores are for different programs. We just know that it has to be acceptable to SBA. One of the things is pretty well black and white is if you are over 60 days delinquent with child support, then you're not going to be eligible for a loan. If you defaulted on an SBA disaster loan, you might not be eligible for a loan. If you just filed bankruptcy, you might be declined for the loan. But if you've been in a bankruptcy, been paying a Chapter 13, and the trustee allows you to take on debt, you might be approved. I say this to not discourage anybody from applying. We want you to help anybody that comes across your desk or your phone, and let us make the decision, because you can't know all the ins and outs of a business or a homeowner or a renter until you see their credit, until you evaluate their repayment ability, and all other factors. Repayment ability is on here because we are cash flow lenders. So it doesn't matter if you have a homeowner and they have 100% equity in their property. If they don't have the ability by our analysis to make payments every month, we will not approve the loan, whereas a bank would. Next slide, please. All right, you can borrow up to $25,000 without pledging collateral. If you are a business, you can borrow up to $25,000 to repair and replace, and up to another $25,000 for working capital. That's the economic injury loan. So essentially, you can borrow up to $50,000 unsecured. That's unheard of. So that's another reason to apply for an SBA disaster loan. Don't count yourself out. If you have real estate, we're going to take real estate as collateral. If the business doesn't have real estate, then we will take business assets. We'll take machinery and equipment, inventory, whatever is available, tractors, any of that type of thing. But if an individual or a business doesn't have anything, I will say we had a lot of Uber drivers with the COVID loans. We're not going to take a car for collateral, generally speaking. And so they have nothing else. Then we're going to limit the loan to the $25,000 unsecured for physical and $25,000 for economic. But we're not going to say we're not going to lend you any money because you have no collateral. Next slide, please. All right, the procedure generally is, this is a presidential declaration, so we want everybody in those primary counties to register with FEMA first. That's so that they can get the help, the homeowners and renters can get the help they need immediately. And then once the business or the homeowner or the renter is referred to SBA, we want them to fill out a loan application. Electronically is the preferred method. In non-COVID times, we will have disaster recovery centers close to the disaster areas. Currently, we are working virtually, so we only accept applications either submitted through the mail, which takes a long time and is not the best way to do it, or online at disasterloan.sba.gov. Next slide. So then we're going to evaluate credit. If everything's okay, then the file will go to have the property verified. We have construction analysts that are going to maybe get pictures from the business or the homeowner and evaluate what it would cost to repair or replace the damages. Then they're going to submit the file to the loan officer. The loan officer is going to look at the amount of the damages, look at the credit, make sure everything's satisfactory. Then they're going to crunch the numbers, make sure that the applicant can repay the loan, and they're going to set the terms of the loan. The way they do that is they decide how much of the loan up to the next $100, what the payments are going to be, what the interest rate's going to be, and then they send it to the legal department. The legal department will prepare loan closing documents. It is not until somebody gets those loan closing documents that they're eligible for any money from SBA. We have to, this is a loan, not a gift, not a grant like FEMA. So we have to have the documents signed. We always have question in the field. How long does it take to get the money? I can't tell you, because when we mail the loan closing documents to the applicant, they might sit on them for 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks. They have up to 60 days to close the loan. So it's not until they return those documents that we can legally disperse funds. So it's really dependent upon them. Next slide, please. Usually we disperse in installments. The first installment is usually $25,000 because that's the easiest amount to disperse, and it doesn't require many loan closing documents. When we have loans up into the hundreds of thousands of dollars, we'll disperse the money, we'll ask for receipts, we'll ask for mortgage documents and insurance, and then we'll disperse some more. And then when the verifier looks at the receipts, make sure they're all in order and going into the project, they can disperse a final amount. So generally, that's the way it is, similar to any construction loan at a lending institution. Next slide, please. All right, I will let you read this on your own because the slides are going to be sent out to everybody. But there's lots of reasons to pursue a loan. Many people, especially nowadays in COVID, don't want a loan. They want grants. But grants are very limited and not everybody is entitled to a grant. If you had insurance, most likely you're not going to get a grant. If you had total loss of your home, probably not going to get a grant for that full amount, because we can lend up to $200,000 for the house, $40,000 for the contents. FEMA's grants don't go that high. We can lend up to $2 million for the business building and contents. FEMA doesn't give any grants to businesses. So there's no obligation to take the loan. And there's no cost to apply except the time it takes to complete the application. So those are two things that I would encourage you to tell your customers, clients, applicants. The only cost is the time it takes to complete the application. Let us provide the offer, or let us tell you if you're declined and what the options are. But don't count yourself out, because SBA's loan processing is much different than a traditional lender. All right, now we're going into the COVID stage. We have had since March of last year been processing COVID loans for economic injury. And again, economic injury is working capital loans. So because of the economic disruption, every business practically in the United States and US territories is able to apply. So what we're trying to do is give the business working capital to pay the utilities, to pay the lease, so they can stay in operation. Even if they don't have many sales, they can keep that business building. They can keep that location. They can, a lot of restaurants are not open to the public the way they used to be, but a lot of them are doing Meals on Wheels, at least in some areas like Florida and Georgia. Another thing is that if you have 500 or less employees, we're considering you a small business. Normally, we have to look through a guide to determine whether or not a business meets the criteria of being small to qualify, but 500 or less employees and you're good to go. You had to be in operation before January 31st, 2020. And you cannot use the proceeds to expand, to consolidate debt, to do things that you wouldn't have normally done, with few exceptions. So if you, let's say, had Kathy Cook Florist shop, and I have a florist van, and that's how we deliver flowers. And I go, oh, I got, $25,000 in a loan from SBA. I want to pay off the van. No, you can't do that. You can only make the monthly payments that you would have made had the disaster not occurred. You can pay healthcare, you can pay inventory, you can pay on your machine and equipment just as you would have had the disaster not occur. The interest rates are fixed, 3.75 for businesses, 2.75 for nonprofit. This is the first time that we are able to offer COVID loans for agriculture and for faith-based organizations. So if you're a church, you're a parochial school, anything like that, you are eligible. And I know a lot of you probably know these things because we've been processing these loans over a year, but because we want to get additional applicants, we want to promote the fact that we still have money for these loans. I'm going over this again. You can borrow up to $25,000 without collateral. If you borrow more than $25,000, then we're going to file a universal commercial code filing. If you have an automobile and you are borrowing money to pay for that automobile, the company that you're borrowing from has a lien on the car. That's the same thing that SBA is doing for the business. We're putting a lien on the business assets, everything but real estate. We are not taking the business building. We are not taking the rental houses. We are not taking the let's see, business building, rental house, the primary residence. Okay. If the loan is over 200,000, which in today's terms, we're able to go up to 500,000, then we're going to ask for personal guarantees. Again, we're not taking real estate. Now, whereas when COVID EIDLs or economic injury loans first started, we were offering 2 months of working capital. Then it became 6 months of working capital. Now we're offering up to a total of 24 months of working capital. That means what we are doing is looking at the income prior to January 31st, 2020, which we'll say was a good year, a normal year. So essentially we're looking at the sales in 2019. We're looking for the net sales, and then we're going to offer 24 months for working capital. If the applicant has already received 6 months of net sales, then they're eligible for the difference up to a maximum of 500,000. Next slide, please. All right, now we got a different program going on. Early on, and when COVID-19 economic injury loans first started, we had an advance. We called it an emergency advance. And initially, it was offered at $10,000. And then we determined that that amount of budget that we got for those advances was not going to last. So the policy was to offer up to $1,000 per employee to a maximum of $10,000. So if you had 5 employees, you were eligible for $5,000. All right, so anybody who received less than $10,000 advance, and it doesn't matter whether or not they had an economic injury disaster loan, anybody that had less than 10,000 is eligible for whatever the difference is in $10,000 and what they got. So let's suppose this person got a $1,000 grant. They were a sole proprietor, they received a $1,000 grant. They're eligible for an additional $9,000 advance, which is a grant, if the following is true. If the business is located in a low-income community, if they suffer greater than 30% economic loss, and have 300 or fewer employees. If all that's true, then they're going to get an invite. I'm sorry. They're going to get an invite if they receive less than the $10,000 initially. Then they're going to have to check and see if they're in a low-income community. They are going to have to give us their monthly sales for 2019, 2020, and if they can, up to the most current month in 2021. If they meet the criteria, low income community, and they have less than 30%, greater than 30% economic loss and 300 or less employees, then we will send them direct deposit the amount of the advance that they earned. So if it was the sole proprietor with $10,000, then they would be eligible, with $1,000, they would be eligible for the balance to make $10,000, which would be $9,000. Next slide, please. Beyond the targeted advance, we have another type of grant, and this is a supplemental target advance. The criteria for this is that they, again, have to be in a low income area. They have to prove this time that their loss is 50% or more, and that they only have 10 or fewer employees. So it's a more stringent criteria. If they did not meet the criteria on the previous slide for the targeted advance, they're not going to meet this. So they have to have qualified for the targeted advance on the previous page, meaning at least 30% or more loss, 300 or less employees, and located in a low income community. And then they come to this and it's even stricter, 50% or more economic loss, 10 or fewer employees. Next slide, please. All right, many times we've been asked, can a business that received a COVID-19 EIDL apply for a disaster loan under this declaration? Yes, every disaster declaration is separate. So an applicant can apply for COVID, they can get the targeted advance, they can get a loan for the Kentucky mudslides, landslides, flooding, and severe storm. Those are separate. They cannot be consolidated. They're not going to be the same interest rate. They are separate loans and cannot be consolidated. Can a business use part of the COVID-19 loan program's proceeds for this declaration and other declarations? No. By law, loan funds for one disaster should not be used for another disaster incident. You know, when we're making the COVID loans, we're making the loans for working capital because of the economic disruption caused by COVID-19 or the coronavirus. And that's what it should be used for. The payables, the monthly fixed debts, all of those things. When you get a loan for this Kentucky flood, storms, mudslides, landslides, and flooding, you're supposed to use those funds as they were designated, and mainly for repair and replace of what occurred from this disaster declaration. So the money is separate. Next slide, please. Can SBA combine two separate disaster loans and re-amortize the debt for a lower payment? And as I said before, no. These are different fundings, different budgets, and they can't be consolidated. So you can ask anybody in SBA and they'll tell you the same thing. Even though it may not make sense to somebody who just got a COVID loan, why they couldn't consolidate it with a loan for the Kentucky disaster declaration, but it comes from different resources. It comes from the US Treasury, but it's for different causes. I'm sorry. And the current deferment period, we discussed that for current loans for Kentucky is 18 months. And for the COVID, it just depends on when you apply. But currently, if they had existing loan in 2020, their first payment due was being extended all the way out 24 months. So we'd already extended it 12 months, and now we're extending it another 12 months. Interest will accrue during that period. Next slide, please. Okay. This is the website to go if you want information about the Kentucky Declaration, sba.gov/disaster. If you want information on any of the COVID-19 programs, then it's sba.gov/relief. If you want to have a customer service representative help you, then call 800-659-2955. They are available every single day from 8 to 8. We have field operations specialists that are not able to go on the ground now and operate from a disaster recovery center because of COVID. So we're working what's called virtually. And that means that you can contact them by email at FOCE-help, HELP at SBA.gov, and they will write you back, answer your questions. If you need hand holding on how to fill out an application, they'll do that too. And with that, I will turn it over to Robert if you want to read any questions or add anything. And we'll just go to the next slide.
I think that Julie has been answering the questions that have come through in the chat.
Okay, well then
Yeah,
it's
so-
at this time I should thank everybody for assisting SBA's disaster office. I know that this past year, especially with COVID and other disasters, it's been a heavy lift for all of us. So we could not do it without our partners at the district office, with the small business development centers, the Women's Business Center, the Veterans Business Center, SCORE, chambers, Department of Commerce, Economic Development. It really does take a team. It might take a community to raise a child, but it takes almost everybody in SBA to help on disaster declarations, because disasters happen to people, and through no fault of their own, everybody can't always be ready. Also on this slide, it does mention that if you, pardon me, if you were declined, you can ask for reconsideration. So no is not always no. If you were declined because, let's say we said your credit was not satisfactory, but you know that there's stuff on your credit that's also on your son's credit and is all tethered together. You can write SBA and explain what's going on, and we'll take another look at it. If you lack repayment ability and you want to have somebody else in the business apply with you, that might make the difference. So no is not always no. And should be one more slide. Here are some helpful websites. We not only wanted to, take time to talk about our program, but we also want to start bringing together all of our resources and talk about future things, such as hazard mitigation, how to protect damage in the future, disaster preparedness, how people and businesses can learn what hazards are in their area and how to protect the business operation, all of those types of things. So we hope to join you all again with future webinars, but here are some resources that are really good along that vein. And there should be maybe one more. There you go. What would you like to know? And Julie's answering everything. Julie, is there any question that is a typical question that we might want to read out? Because since we're recording this, we want the benefit to go to all the listeners.
Okay, there's a question about what about people who have insurance and how does that work with the SBA loans? So maybe you want to talk about how it's for the uninsured losses and the difference between the insurance and what they need to recover.
I just love when people ask things that I skipped. I love it, love it, love it. Okay, you don't have to apply for insurance before registering or applying with SBA. But what in fact happens is we inspect the full amount of the damages, and whenever insurance pays, we deduct that amount from the loan. So let's say your business damage came up to $200,000, and at the time you applied to SBA, your insurance had not paid you one single nickel. Then we would make you the loan for the full amount, the $200,000, and then we would have you sign an agreement that if your insurance pays anything for this particular disaster, then you would use that money to pay the SBA loan down. So the net result is your uncompensated loss. So using numbers, we would say $200,000 loss. Let's say insurance paid you $100,000. You have $100,000 uncompensated, and that would be your remaining loan. Great question.
Okay, we have another question here. What about if somebody gets a loan for a certain amount and then as time goes on, they find additional damage? Can their loan be modified? Can they ask for additional money?
Boy, I think some SBA people must be in the audience. Absolutely can modify the loans. You can increase them, decrease them, change just about every component. But that happens a lot. I mean, we're in the spring and going toward the summer, and you might not realize, and the inspector might not realize that you have a damaged foundation. But later you find out. Then you can send a contractor's estimate to SBA and say, I need my loan increase because I have this additional damage. And we would consider increasing your loan. It happens in a lot of areas that are maybe like in the mountains where it gets cold and they don't realize until the fall that their furnace is not working because they don't need it right now. And so that's a great question. By the same token, you may recall I was talking about how the loans are dispersed in installments. You know, $25,000 first, then you show receipts where you spent that much, send in additional loan closing documents, you get another draw. Well, at any time, if you have gotten as much money as you need, for whatever reason, maybe you decided that you don't want to repair everything, or maybe you have a good brother-in-law and he's going to do some of the work so you don't have that overhead cost, then you can decide that you want less, and that's perfectly okay. What you should never do is pay the whole loan off and then decide you want more. Once you pay the loan off, that's it, you're done. So keep that in mind. Make sure that when you're ready to pay the loan off, that you are complete with everything that you need to do. Next question, Julie.
There's another question here about whether farmers are covered under these types of disaster loans.
Farmers are a unique type of business, and under a normal disaster loan, and when I say normal, I mean one that's caused by natural disasters such as floods, hurricanes, tornadoes, earthquakes, farmers are not eligible for farm damage. They should go to the local Farmers Home Administration, Farmers Home Agency, whichever you call it, and ask about emergency loans. However, the farmer is eligible for any damage to the primary residence because that's not part of the farm. So for the primary residence and the acre around it, you are eligible.
Okay, this question is more of a COVID question. Somebody has a client who applied and their application was flagged as a duplicate, but it's not a duplicate. This person has 2 businesses. This individual has been calling every day and he's getting nowhere. They keep saying they're going to move it up to supervisor and nothing's happening. Should he just reapply?
No, 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 no. That's what, if you reapply, then that's going to count as a duplicate and it's going to stay there. Anything that matches something else. You know, if you had the Kathy Cook florist shop and somebody else submits an application, Kathy Cook florist shop, it's going to be flagged as a dupe and neither is going to be processed. Or if the first one was already being processed, it might go through. What you may consider doing is writing SBA disaster customer service altogether, disaster customer service at sba.gov. Or if you go to one of the SBDC offices and talk to them, they can write to my office an inquiry and we will research it for you. And you know, it's just purely a computer thing where, you know, if you have the same restaurant name, the same address, you know, it seems like there is a duplicate and there's plenty of them, but without hearing from you exactly what the difference is in the first one and the second one, if you put the same address or if you use the same EIN, you can't do that. So it's never going to change, but we'll take a look at it. Next question, please.
That is actually all of the questions that we have. So we're good.
Okay, all right. Well, I will turn it back over to Kevin.
Thank you very much, Kathy, Julie, Robert. Appreciate this information so very much. I do have one additional question, if I might be able to sneak it in. This is, again, a COVID related. In regards to what I guess is probably the newer program, the supplemental targeted advance.
Mhm.
If is that a situation where the client would be notified by SBA if they are eligible, or is there a different application process for that? If for instance, in this situation, they've already received the targeted idle advance, but for the supplemental, how does that process work?
If they receive the supplemental targeted and they've met the criteria for, I'm sorry, if they've met the targeted advance,
Yeah,
then they should go ahead and just go back to the portal and they should be able to apply for the supplemental.
okay. Okay, thank you. I've got at least one client that I'm working with that thinks that would be the case based upon those requirements. So
Yeah, well, and that just reminded me of something we had occur just a few minutes before the session. We're having some people who are applying for the targeted idle advance, and the way you go into a portal, there's a blue button and you're supposed to be able to click it to start the process, and people are saying that's not working. When you go in, you're supposed to put your application number in. That's one thing that's causing problems, putting the applicant's or borrower's name. Some people are having problems because they are using different computer sites and they need to probably go to be on MS or Microsoft Edge instead of on Google or Foxfire or any of the others. So that's what we've just been told. We are trying really hard to keep up with some of the new program situations. And I would ask you to go to sba.gov/relief and look at the frequently asked questions, because some of the things that are coming up, the headquarters communications department is trying to capture those things and that advice. So I just gave you what I just read on an email, but if there are other questions, if you're having problems getting on the site or whatever, please reach out to SBDC, SBA partners, and they can send inquiries to our office. If you're not getting any satisfaction, then we will do the research for you.
Sounds great. Thank you all once again. I don't see any additional questions, so I think we've got those covered. As you mentioned, we've recorded this and we'll share this out with some additional partners so we can help spread the word. And certainly we'll be following up with any additional questions or issues that come up as a result of those. So again, Robert, Kathy, Julie, I appreciate you all so very much, and being willing to come on and share with us today. This information is certainly very helpful. So
Thank you, Kevin. We appreciate it.
thank you.
Yes, thanks, Kevin.